All right, welcome back to the Ari and Samantha show. Last week, we started a conversation about holding space for your partner and talked about some key ideas. And some that stuck out for me, if you missed that episode, were uh, we're always practicing a particular way of relating to our partner. And we're either doing it consciously or unconsciously. So we talked about how we might skillfully hold space for a partner. And part of that is knowing yourself, knowing what did I experience with my parents or my caregivers growing up? What have I experienced with past partners? And what's my internal emotional landscape? That's part of knowing yourself. We also talked about this idea of self love and that we actually have to hold space for ourselves. That those are essential ingredients to hold space for another person. So we're really breaking down all these different components of holding space. There's a lot going on in order to do it right. We also talked about holding space for your partner's feelings, even if they're negative feelings, because that's what creates a connection. That's what creates chemistry too. So it's not something that can be avoided or minimized. You can't hold space for only the good parts. So welcome back to the show. I'm Dr. Ari Graff, psychologist, men's transformational coach. I'm here with Samantha Berkey, registered psychiatric nurse, entrepreneur, and coach too. So we're done being the nice guy and the good girl, and we're committed to living our lives consciously, taking radical responsibility for ourselves and our relationships, and always growing and expanding. All right, so Samantha, we got into some important areas in that first episode. Uh, but I want to hear more about how we can have capacity for holding space for someone. Like that, it's like a power level. How do we increase that capacity? How do we lower it?
Well, I would say, I know for me personally, if someone is coming at me and they are criticizing me, or they're angry, or they're raising their voice, or they're cursing, or they're pointing in my face and using language like you never or you always, that is the opposite. That is actually lowering capacity. And so, in order to increase capacity, I would say deep grounded presence. Um, when I'm talking with someone about and I'm feeling anxious or on edge or unsafe or worried about something, and someone is grounded and present and not necessarily defensive or making it about them, it really increases my capacity to withstand more and to expand myself more. And I would say on the opposite end, if I'm trying to increase capacity in my partner or in someone else, maybe even my child, cultivating my own practice, being able to like offer that to someone else, that deep grounded presence, and being able to, if I'm focused on externally on somebody's behavior and I'm feeling frustration and it's starting to rise and bubble up,
Mm-hmm.
being able to like take a pause, connect to your breath. Even if they're in the moment, this is happening in front of them, before speaking, let them know, like, I need to take a moment. I need to like step away for a bit because I'm feeling really frustrated. I'm going to go change my energy. And then I'm going to come back to, can we talk about this in a few minutes? And then on my own, being able to increase my own capacity is much easier. So being able to close my eyes, connect to my breath, feel frustration fully in my body, and like really hone in on it. Like, where specifically am I feeling this in my body? Am I feeling it like in the center, in the core of my body? Am I feeling it in my fingertips? Is it radiating out of my hands? Like, what's the real like sensation? When you use this as a practice, you can really start to completely block out the external and the behaviors and the things that cause it, and really focus inward. And you'll start to notice, like, what is the sensation? Does it feel like all of your cells are starting to swirl like little tornadoes, or like they're buzzing?
Uh-huh.
Like, specifically, what are you feeling?
Get a visual or a sound.
Yeah, yeah. And so when I say feel your feelings fully, I'm not talking about feel anger and still focus on that person and your anger. I'm thinking inward. Okay, feel anger in, where is it in your body? What does that feel like in the cells of cellularly in your body? And when you do this and you're connecting to your breath, actually visualizing breathing to that part of your body, whether it's to your hands or whether it's to your core or maybe it's your heart, wherever that is, being able to actually breathe, like visualize breathing into that part of your body. And when you do that, you're less focused on the external behavior of someone else. You are more clear. You're able to, from this point, ask yourself some questions. What's the meaning that I'm attributing to what I observed? What's maybe the value that's underneath that I'm butting up against? Maybe someone got in my way and was interrupting something I was doing, and I have a value of freedom and flow and kind of impeded against that. And it's such a small thing, but if it happens 10 times, I might feel frustrated.
So this is something you're practicing as you're listening to the person you're holding space for.
So I would, if it's like a lot of frustration and I'm about to react, I would take a breath, I would pause, and if I needed to, I would say, "Hey, I'm going to go change my energy, and I'm going to come back. Can we talk about this, whatever it is?" And I would go and do this practice.
So the I think you're bringing up another strategy or skill is like the strategic pause when you're holding space for someone. That
Strategic pause.
you might actually need a pause or a break to ground yourself and then come back and hold space some more.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I've already moved myself from anger and frustration to more of like anger, frustration, and heart closure, which is where we become really defensive, to now I'm more in a place of curiosity and openness, open to understanding, and kind of letting go of my initial assumption that led to me being angry, because it was never really about them. It was more about the behavior. It's not this person that makes me mad, it's what happened that makes me mad. And I
And
kind of
you're
like,
talking about. I just want to make sure I'm clear as the space holder that you're going
yes.
through this range of emotions.
Oh, that I'm the space holder. So no, I'm talking about like if
You're
I'm
talking about as
saying
the whole D,
as the what?
as the whole D.
Yes, as the whole D. And so
So,
from this,
so
go
is there
ahead.
a responsibility as the whole D to regulate themselves, to ground themselves? Their job isn't just to express their emotions, but it is also to do it in a conscious way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
I think so too. Especially if it's an adult relationship, you know, even if you're holding space for your partner, they're not a child. You know,
Right.
they
Well, and
don't
there's
get.
two people with two different nervous systems that also have responses, right? So we want to make sure that we are communicating in a healthy way.
So one of the things I was thinking about uh, after our last talk about this was just um, do you have do you have to set some ground rules with your partner or non-negotiables about how you can interact when one person is holding space for the other?
I think it's helpful, but I don't know if that.
Does that shut things down, or is that actually a necessary ingredient?
I think creating a framework is helpful. You know, I think it helps to build consistency. I think just like what you were talking about last week, where you are intentionally setting up time each week to have discussions about where we're at. How are you feeling? How was last week for you? What are some things that you noticed about me that maybe I can improve? And maybe these are some things that I noticed, or I was feeling this and notice this. If you're doing that consistently and not as a reaction to something, but actually doing it proactively, I think that's really helpful. And so I think in the same way, if you do have some type of framework, and I imagine that it's kind of something that develops over time and probably becomes more and more refined as you practice it.
Refined as a couple or refined in yourself?
A refined practice together. If you're creating a framework that you're using, I'm sure it becomes more and more refined as you guys get better and better practiced at it. Like, right, it's like probably really clunky in the beginning, and then you're getting like a more in a flow with it. And then in terms of the holding space piece of it, I was going to go there too.
No, don't go there.
Don't go there. I like John Wineland's take on it. And if someone is revealing the truth of their heart and like how they're feeling to someone else, and then that other person starts to defend themselves or starts to pull away, you're essentially teaching that person it's not safe for me to express myself to you. And then that creates a lot of disconnection. It creates a heart's closure. I was going to say it creates vaginal dryness, which is true. I do believe that. If you're not open and expressive, you're not going to be sexually either.
That's one of the worst symptoms.
That is the worst. That's right. And so you can actually teach your partner that it's not safe to talk to you about things. And I don't know if people recognize that when someone is revealing something to you about how they feel, it's not an attack necessarily. It could just be, I'm wanting to share like something deep that's happening inside me. Can you hold this for me, please? And
Yeah.
that's an offering, right? But if you're like, and your nervous system scared and they're like, no, get that away from me, I don't want anything to do with that, then you're totally missing out on this great opportunity for more closeness and connection. And so John Wineland's teaching is, he talks about how the king's heart is wide. The king's heart is wide. It's wide and expansive. It does not defend, it validates.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so whether or not you agree the assumption that your partner bought into about something they observed, you can totally disagree. You can, with integrity, know that is not what my intention was in that behavior at all.
Mm-hmm.
You can know that, and at the very same time, you can still honor the truth of their experience, that because they had that assumption that was probably queued up from childhood. They're probably searching their external environment for that exact situation, and they have that like ready at the top of their mind. They're looking for that specific problem.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's in alignment with your intention or not, they still experienced that. They experienced it and felt it fully in their body. And to them, it was true. So, how can we validate that that was true for them and they felt that? Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so sorry that you felt that. I don't know if that's the best way to say it. I'm so sorry that you experienced that. And I never want you to experience that again. Come here, give me a hug, or whatever it is. Like, how can I support you with your feelings of sadness?
Yeah.
Do you need a hug? Do you want me to just sit here and feel sad with you? I can do that.
Yeah. I think you put that well. I think the trick for a lot of people is, yeah, validating the other person's experience without necessarily having to apologize for it, which is where a lot of the nice guys, good girls fall in. It's like, if the other person's upset, then I must be responsible. So I think, it is important to own your piece and to take that radical responsibility. I think that's another concept that we talked about, but without actually fully owning the other person's feelings, or,
I
or
think
take taking
yeah,
the other person's experience as reality.
you said that perfectly. Yeah, validating their experience without apologizing for it, because apologizing for it means I did that to you. With that intention, I did that and I'm so sorry. And it's kind of like, no, I didn't actually, that wasn't what happened. You don't need to say that to them, but you can still honor that they experienced that and could feel for them and have compassion for them. And I love you. I never want you to feel like that. Get over here, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the radical responsibility concept, I think, is empowering and challenging, because it's, at least the way that I think about it, because it asks you to really think about what what are all the ways that I have co-created or constructed this relationship, and potentially impacted my partner. Like, am I distracted by my work? Have I been avoiding parenting duties? Have I not been creating one-on-one time with my partner? What is my role?
Yeah.
Even if my partner that I'm holding space for seems irrational or seems to be overreacting in the moment, the radical responsibility is really asking you to be fully conscious of all the different ways that you're participating in the relationship.
Yeah. For me, it would be I'm noticing that I've been saying yes to doing XYZ for you for this long under the guise that I genuinely want to do these things for you and I love you and I care for you. So I'm going to do all of this for you. But secretly, I've really just been wanting your approval and your love and your validation. And doing these things actually takes me away from things that are really important to me and bring me joy. And so then when I don't do those things and I'm doing these things for you to get your validation and your love, I'm totally abandoning myself. And then I'm not feeling like my needs are being met. And that's not your fault. Like I'm doing that and I'm catching myself doing that. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be resentful and frustrated with you because I'm doing some wackadoodle thing to get approval from you. And I want you to know that like I'm doing that. And
Are you saying
so
you don't want to fold my underwear? You've been doing that all along for approval and
well, they're
attention.
so big and it takes so much time. That big booty.
um, so I mean, yeah, you're describing the covert contracts that often come up
Yes.
in relationships.
That takes a lot of awareness, though. That takes a lot of time to yourself to really understand where are your behaviors really coming from and to own that and to like really own your shit.
Right. So you really have to work on yourself and cultivate self-awareness in order to hold space well for someone. It has to be an ongoing practice, whether it's in your own therapy or coaching or meditation, journaling, all of the above. These aren't things you can check a box for.
Yeah. And I think, what does everyone say? You can only meet someone to the degree that you've met yourself, right? You can only really know someone to the degree that you know yourself. And so it is important to cultivate these practices to get in touch with your emotions and really sit and feel with them, understand where they're coming from, and all of your assumptions that you create and walk around with since childhood that you try to apply to everything that you see in your environment and put it on the other people, right? It's important.
So I was thinking today, what do I have the most trouble holding space for? And it's definitely a woman's anger. And I
Mm,
think that it's also because I have trouble getting in touch with my own anger. And it wasn't something that was really expressed much growing up. Anger and conflict were kind of buried. So I'm having to discover that now as an adult.
yeah. What does that look like now? What kind of practices have you created for yourself to kind of let out anger?
You know, punching the wall,
The wall?
jujitsu.
You
No,
ever do
I'm kidding.
damage?
um, it's really just, yeah, it's being conscious. It's practicing it. It's sticking up for myself. It's
Mm,
setting boundaries, and not giving a not giving a fuck
yeah.
sometimes. Not in a rude way, but just like being unattached to
Yeah, and how it's going to, what the outcome is going to be, like how it's going to end up. It's like, no, this is inside me. This needs to be expressed. And
your
I would
partner.
say,
Your partner wants to know you have an angry bone in your body too. They want to see that you have all your feelings, at least if they're a healthy person.
Yeah. I have a quick story. I was on an ayahuasca retreat, and my nervous system was so at rest. It was so like at center. And I went on a date with someone that I was dating long distance, and he just happened to be in town, and we went out to dinner.
This is post
And
retreat.
this is post retreat. This is like maybe 4 days after. And we're laughing and we're having a great time. And at the end of dinner, he kind of flew off the handle over something that really caught me off guard. And he was raising his voice at me, using his hand gestures, and accusing me. Um, I don't know if this is the sound kind of messing up a little bit. Someone's vacuuming right outside my door.
You're fine.
Okay.
We,
So,
we keeping it raw on this show.
yes, real, authentic.
Yeah.
So, all of this, and I just, not even having developed this practice yet, I just automatically closed my eyes and just like sat there in front of him and just was breathing. And I looked at him and was just like, I feel so sad and I feel so scared right now. And he like stopped in his tracks. And the story I make up in my mind is that when he's done this before in relationships, he's probably gotten a very different response. He probably either got someone yelling back at him, or he got someone that totally shut down and got scared and quiet and went away,
Hmm.
or would take on the responsibility of his emotions and apologize, right? And I just looked at him and told him how I was feeling. And he completely calmed down and was like, "That's weird. Why?" And I was like, "I don't know. I haven't really gotten that far yet. All I can say is every single cell in my body is swirling around and I feel so scared." And he like sat down and, we got into the car and he's like, "You still seem upset." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still very upset." And he's like, "Oh," and he grabs me and gives me a hug. So it's getting in touch with your feelings instead of reacting to the feelings, but really just like feeling it and letting someone observe you feeling that. It's a game changer. It totally changes the dynamic. You stop the cycle in its tracks.
So in that instance, you were holding space. Would you say you were holding space for him when he was angry, and you gave him some honest feedback about your own feelings? That that was
I think I was honestly holding space for myself. I think if I was holding space for him, and if I had that skill set at that point in time, I would have been able to do that all internally, recognize what I'm feeling, and then been able to say to him, "Oh, it sounds like you're really angry. Let's talk about that." And like continue to talk to him about his anger instead of immediately sharing with him about how his anger was making me feel. Does that make sense? But at that point in time, like this is like stage in the continuum, right? So like I was learning at that point how to just get in touch with like the root of my feelings rather than the reaction of my feelings. I could feel like scared and all that, and then there's a reaction that could be anger. But what's the primary feeling? So that was my first time like doing that in real
hmm
time with somebody. I don't think that that's like like the end result that you want. I think it is. I think my job was to hold space for him. I just didn't have the capacity for it at that time.
but it does come back to your point about the essentialness of holding space for yourself. That's always got to be there in order to hold space for someone else.
Yes. So yeah, I think if I that was just like the first stage of many more to come. And sometimes it's going to look like that. It's not like you're going to be like, okay, we're going to be in this practice and we're going to be a perfect, healthy, communicating couple. It's going to be ugly. And it's going to be like that yogic practice, right? Of harmony, disharmony, and repair, and harmony and disharmony and repair. And hopefully, when you practice it long enough, the length of time that you're in harmony becomes longer, and the length of time that you're in disharmony becomes shorter. But it's not going to stop.
Life is messy, y'all. Just accept it.
There's beauty in the mess.
There's beauty in the mess. Okay, I love this conversation. I love talking to you. And I think that's a good place to stop. If you're enjoying
Likewise.
the Ari and Samantha show, if you have a name you think we should call our show, let us know. Give us some feedback. See us on the YouTubes, on the Instagrams. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.